I am Leah Straley, the Assistant Dean of Recruitment at Willamette University College of Law. Welcome to all of our incoming students and students who have been admitted. We have several students who are still in that time when they're making their decision. So welcome to everybody, and welcome to our panelists. We would like to welcome 4 outstanding alums today. I think that we'll just do a short introduction. So on my screen here, Nancy, you are the first one who I see. So if we can just start with a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll move down the line, and then I'll open it up for students to ask questions. Feel free to ask some questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question directly to our panelists. So Nancy, why don't you begin for us?
Sure. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to any prospective students and to those that are already there. I hope you're having as great an experience at Willamette as I did. I graduated a short 34 years ago in 1986, and I blinked, and here we are today. But I've had a wonderful journey since I left Willamette. I live in Anchorage, Alaska, and I moved up here the month after I graduated. And I have worked in a small firm, I've worked in a large firm, I've had my own practice. I worked for a mega oil corporation in-house, and now I work for a medium-sized native corporation in Alaska. I started with the native corporation in the legal department, but about 3 years ago, I became the director of corporate development. So I am responsible for all mergers and acquisitions on behalf of the company. And I have to say that while I wouldn't be able to do it without my law degree, I'm really enjoying the business side of things as opposed to pure legal. So that's a little bit about my background, and wish you all a good experience just like I had.
Thank you so much. Eva, why don't you go next, please?
Well, this is perfect because Nancy and I were in the same class in law school, so
yes.
I don't have to tell you how many years ago that I graduated, but also in 1986. And I welcome all of you too, and echo what Nancy had to say about having a really great experience at Willamette. I loved law school, which people often say, you must be a weirdo, but I think I wasn't the only one, clearly, and really enjoyed my time there. And then I've also done a variety of things, but right after law school, I did a judicial clerkship for the Oregon Court of Appeals, and then I went to Stoll Reeves, which is a large regional law firm based in Portland, and I spent 10 years there, and ended up practicing. Always was on the corporate side, never did any litigation, but did a lot of merger and acquisition work and public company work, financings, that sort of thing. Left there after 10 years to become general counsel for KinderCare Learning Centers, which at that time was moving from Montgomery, Alabama to Portland, Oregon. So this is a very Portland-centric life that I've led, but I love Portland. And spent 10 years there, 10-year program. And then after leaving there, I took a little bit of a break and ended up starting a consulting practice on my own, where I was doing kind of a combination of legal and business consulting work, and worked for a number of different companies, served in a couple of interim general counsel roles, and then happily co-founded a firm with my good friend Liz Large, who you're about to hear from. It's a very incestuous little group here. And so Liz and I have been partners for about 3 years now. And we have a firm that focuses on providing in-house counsel type resources for companies that either don't have them because they don't have an in-house legal team, or they're trying to supplement their own in-house legal teams. So welcome again, and super happy to be here.
Great, thank you so much. Liz, why don't you go ahead, please?
Oh, mute Liz. Liz, you're on mute.
God, that's the second time. I have a little non-COVID cough, so I've been trying to stay on mute in between, and good Lord. Anyway, I love following Eva because she has told about 85% of my story as well. Except I graduated in 1996 from Willamette. Like Eva, I had and Nancy, had a great experience at Willamette, and I really, really enjoyed my time there and the law school experience. I have worked in small firms, large firms. I also worked at Stoll Reeves, where Eva did. I came up on the litigation side, so I did complex business litigation for a number of years, and then ended up as a general counsel also at KinderCare. I see I'm your stalker. It's creepy when I tell it this way in this succession, Eva.
I love it.
But Eva hired me at KinderCare, and after she left, a few years later, I became general counsel there. And then you heard the story of our current endeavor, which has been really fun. We really believe in the in-house counsel role, but part of that is figuring out how to best partner with lawyers who work in law firms. So we work every day with lawyers on behalf of the clients we're serving, and who are, if it's a transaction, on the other side with lawyers in law firms around the state and frankly other parts of the country. Currently, I'm serving one of our clients, Portland Public Schools, as the contracted general counsel there. And so also have some views into the public sector side. I also worked at DOJ for a stint. So very Portland centric. I think one of the pre-questions, Leo, was where did you live before law school? And I did live in Seattle and San Francisco. So there you go. Welcome. I'm so glad you're taking this journey through the Willamette University College of Law.
Thank you so much. All right, Dave, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining, and welcome to Willamette. I can't imagine trying to orient myself to a new school and a new situation during this pandemic. So good work. Stick with it. We'll all get through this, I guess. Make the best of it. So I am the president and CEO of Hoffman Construction Company. Currently, and I graduated in 1986, but it was from the first grade, not from Willamette Law School. I didn't graduate from Willamette until 2007. I'm originally from Portland, so I came back to Portland after law school. I came straight in-house with Hoffman. That was not by design, that was not the plan, but I took a wrong turn somewhere and ended up here, and ended up loving it and never left. So I served for about 10 years as general counsel before moving over to an executive role, and then eventually took over as CEO 2 years ago.
Thank you so much. So we have one question in the chat so far. For students who are attending this, feel free to unmute your mic and ask questions. We are happy to have you ask questions in the chat or just chime in. So for all of the panelists, Paul has a question. When and how did it start to get clear as to what type of law you want to practice? So whoever would like to chime in, feel free.
Well, I guess I can start with that. I would say well into my actual practice before it became clear what I wanted to do. I think in law school, you maybe can eliminate some subjects, but I'm not sure that you can really decide in the real world what would work best for you. And some of it's driven by the needs of the firm. If you go to a law firm, you sometimes don't really get asked what you want to do. You do it and you decide that you either like it or you don't. But I would say you have to have some after law school experience to really land on what it is you're interested in.
I think that.
Oh, go ahead, Liz.
I was going to say, I couldn't agree more. I could tell you that I didn't want to do trust and estate work or workers' comp in law school. But other than that, then those have stuck. I probably had some other things I thought I wouldn't do. I thought I would head down a litigation path, and I did when I left law school. And I never thought that I would be an in-house lawyer. I thought that was only for transactional trained folks from the beginning, let alone be general counsel. And yet that's the path that I went on, and I've loved it. And so I think there's a lot of pressure to people ask, what do you want to do? And you have to know that. And I think you want to stay open to opportunities that come. They'll be unpredictable, and that's part of the joy and adventure of it.
Well said.
And I would echo all of those things. I mean, I thought I wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer because I watched too much Perry Mason as a kid. And seriously, that is the truth. And I was fascinated by that idea. And then I worked for one in law school. But as Nancy said, sometimes firms, and I went to Stoll Reeves, and they're like, you're not doing litigation. We need corporate lawyer, we need corporate associates. And I think that was really a better path for me in hindsight than litigation would have been, simply because I think I think I would have been even crazier than I already am if I had been a litigator. I think it would have sucked the life out of me.
What are you saying about litigators, Eva? Hey.
It's so, it's stressful. I have, some of the work I do is stressful too, but it's stressful in a different way. And I don't really like adversarial. I don't like being someone's adversary. I'd rather help them build something and create something, and then get something done. I mean, you're helping your client, but there's always that sort of adversarial aspect to litigation.
I'd echo all of that. I came into law school having counseled kids in a residential treatment setting for several years before law school, and I thought I wanted to continue to do advocacy work in that area. And long story short, I had an internship lined up somewhere between my second and third year that fell through at the last minute. So I took a job at Hoffman out of need more than desire, and ended up loving it. Like I said, never left. So, and it's been just a great experience. So, other than not knowing that I didn't have a lot of interest in criminal work, that side of it, coming in, I thought I was going down the path of advocacy. So, you never know where it's going to take you.
Great, thank you for those responses. We have a question from Kara. How have you found a work-life balance, and has that changed over the years?
I don't always have to be first, but here we go. Yes, it's definitely changed over the years. And I think that the practice of law is uniquely suited to provide you opportunities for a work-life balance. Not at every stage of the game. I think the first 4, 5, 6 years, you really have to prove yourself. And one of the ways you do that is by working really, really hard. But after that, when I mentioned some of the different things I did, the period of time when I had my own practice was when my children were young and not in school. And so I worked from home and did research and writing for a variety of different attorneys on my schedule. And it worked beautifully. And really what it did, besides enable me to have that balance, is I got exposed to a whole variety of different law subjects, legal subjects, which I had not worked in before. And so when I decided to go back full time, that enabled me to go into a general counsel role because I had the broadness in my practice that I didn't have before. So it's possible.
There's so many different ways to answer that question. One way is to say there are people in my life who would say I should never answer that question because I work a lot. And I tend to work in roles and organizations that thrive on intensity, chaos, problem solving. But I think a better answer, just to give that disclaimer, I think a better answer is that work-life balance changes over the course of your career and for different reasons. As I look back on my early stage career, the lack of balance was largely self-induced stress and insecurity because you leave law school and you show up in your first place to work and you know a lot of things, but you actually don't know how to do that job yet. And so there's a lot of stress in that first year that wasn't, I mean, there was a huge time commitment, but frankly, it was more than the time, it was the internal pressure. And I think lawyers, I think when you land in that first job, in your first few jobs, whether it's the first 4 or 5 years, as Nancy said, whatever that period is, to find lawyers who will give you the kind of feedback you need. And it may be someone in your practice group, it may be, but I happen to work with a lot of introverts, and so I am not one. And so I had to interpret and told myself stories about what silence meant sometimes. And so I think being honest with yourself about what you need and reserving judgment about your career, your workplace, when you get through those first months, because it's a while before you get repeat play on a type of assignment or a legal issue. And it makes it super interesting, but it also, I think there's a lot of stress in those early years. I am a mother of twins. They have been admitted to college. They're not in the juvenile justice system, so I think we're doing okay so far. And I had various, I worked part-time at DOJ for a while. I had my own firm for a while. Then I went back in full-time. I mean, you adjust, and I think that there is no right or wrong choice about, only you can make the choice about work-life balance structurally in terms of the job you have, or on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. My work-life balance looks different depending on the day or week I'm having at work too, and where the trade-offs are. Where do I not, maybe I leave early on Friday because I worked until 10 at a late board meeting on Tuesday, not because I'm scheduled it that way, just because I have the flexibility to do that. And you get to play with those levers at different ways at different points in your career and different jobs. I'll stop because I'm kind of going on and on, but it's not elusive, I guess is my message. You'll find it and have the confidence to define it as you need it, structurally or at a point in time.
This is, I think, a good opportunity for me to give a little plug, and Liz could have easily done this too, for one of the founding principles of the firm that we have together was we wanted to have a situation and to offer opportunities to people who were interested in a different work-life balance. If the big law firms are anything like they were when I was there, and I think they are, judging from the folks that I still work with, that's the associates at those law firms, that's probably going to be a difficult choice for you if you prefer not to work pretty much kind of all the time in your early years. I mean, there's a pretty high expectation, and there are billable hour requirements, and there are all kinds of external factors. But I think, they're definitely cognizant of the need to be more flexible and to look at people, individually. And I think that's happening, but it's a harder process in that environment. But there are environments out there where people can choose to work, more or less. We have a number of our network attorneys have children or have really, interests that are other interests that are really important to them, and they like to be able to, we have some that work all the time too, but some of them work very successfully at compartmentalizing the amount of time that they really are willing to devote to legal work. So I think there's a lot more choices. I think there are a lot more choices now, and I think that's great.
I would say I struggle with the term work-life balance, just personally, because it kind of implies that work is the thing that you do outside of your life, and these opposing forces to be balanced. And I can't look at things that way, because I work too hard and pour too much of myself into my work to think that that's not a meaningful part of my world. And so I just have to look at it a little differently. And I think the key for me is finding that meaning in the work that I'm doing. It doesn't mean that I'm happy every minute of every day or that I enjoy every task at all. In fact, I would say I don't enjoy most of them. but every day I try and find that meaning and that deeper sense of purpose in what I do. And that allows me to kind of stay balanced, I guess, and stay focused on it. It has definitely changed over time. There have been periods where I have, poured way too much of my time into basically work and family. I have 4 children, a wife, a strong family life, but there were times when I was definitely doing just that, just work and just family, at the expense of, it's probably too much information, but, I had very few social connections. I weighed about 60 pounds more than I do today because I had neglected my health, all sorts of things. And I had to make a conscious shift a couple years ago to give myself permission to invest more time in those other aspects of my life. And I was able to do that, and am happier for it. So it's definitely changed over time. And I think now I'm at a point where it's, I do find that meaning, and I'm not trying to count the hours in the day that I'm in the office versus at home or doing other things.
Great, thank you for all of those wonderful answers. John Kirk, do you have a question for the panelists?
I do. Hello, panelists, and thank you for your time. I heard quite a few of you discussing interlocking relationship between law and business. Would you see getting an MBA as being really important in this day and age, along with the JD?
I sure wish I'd gotten one, but it's a little late now. I think, I think there are a lot of skills. I think it would have really advanced, in my chosen field, the learning curve. If I'd had more of that background, I think it's a worthwhile investment. Depending on your circumstances, it's not the only way, but I think it's one way for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My job now is a purely business role. But even before that, whether it's litigation or whether you're doing transactional work, or representing a municipality, if you have a deeper understanding of what drives a business, what are the, what's important, how do they balance, different aspects of it, I think you'll be a more effective attorney. So you can't go wrong that way.
I think it's a very attractive path, particularly with the joint JD MBA program that Willamette offers, to be able to do that in 4 years instead of 5. It's expensive, right? It's another year of tuition and opportunity cost. So not everyone can afford to do that. I think it's the ideal scenario if that is anywhere close, as Nancy described, where you want to go. I think there are some shortcuts that are not as good, but if you're going to work in any organization, you want to know how to read a profit and loss statement, right? You need to understand some basic accounting principles. There are some you can figure out, and there are other people who can tell you how you would gain those skills if you can't afford the time or money to do that 4th year. But certainly that joint program is phenomenal.
I'd echo all of that. I think it's a great program. It's one of the things that attracted me to Willamette in the first place, to have that option. Ultimately, I didn't do it because, as I said, I got that internship at Hoffman and ended up working through my 3rd year anyway and beyond. So I went to the School of Hard Knocks, then actually learned on the job, which I would echo the statement that you got to balance that. If you don't have that opportunity to learn in a business, the MBA is a great way to go. Cost is also a huge factor, right? It's real, and you just have to weigh that for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
I'd point out, one of my best friends who was in my class who added the MBA program along the way. He didn't come in thinking he was going to do it. Has had a very successful career in HR. So, I mean, didn't go the finance accounting route, but, and left law school and has done nothing but HR and some really interesting places since then. So there are lots of ways that MBA plays out too, I guess is my point.
I would also add, I think having that program and having some of the students cross back and forth, I think will enhance the Willamette experience. Having a few MBA students in our classes and being able to do some classes. I don't know if they still do that, but I think I took a class or two over at Atkinson, and that was really helpful.
Great, thank you. We have another question in the chat from Tony. Looking back on the past, it is sometimes very clear what you did wrong. If you had a chance to rewind and start again, what would you do differently, if anything?
How long do you have?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
We have a half an hour.
I can start with that one. I think that's a low-hanging fruit question for me. I lived in Portland and commuted every day back and forth to law school, and I would say I did not engage in the law school experience to the extent that I could have. I did very few of the moot court and other opportunities that were out there. I kind of focused on getting my work done and getting out of there, and I think that was a mistake. I could have done a lot more. I could have taken better advantage of the opportunities. I could have formed a lot deeper relationships. It was a mistake on my part, so I would encourage you to get involved.
I think I would have gotten my MBA.
Me too. I already said that. I think I would have had, I would have been more self-directed. I tended to let things happen to me, and I'm fortunate that some good things happened, but I would have been more self-directed about my career and my choices, instead of just sort of flowing from one thing to the next. It's funny, but when I look back now, I'm so thankful that I was lucky, but I didn't go out and search for the opportunities that I wanted. I took the ones that came to me.
Yeah, I think on that theme, I think that there's some fear, right? I'm not sure what I want, or I'm not sure how to say it, or I'm going to be I'm not going to be bold about asserting it to myself, and then that which enables me to assert it to someone else. So like Eva, my career kind of unfolded in beautiful ways. You don't want to lock yourself in. I would have exercised more in law school. I think about the time I had to do it. Like, man, that I would set up some of those healthy habits that become non-negotiable in your life. I was pretty good about taking a day off. I know that about myself. I can go hard 6 days a week if I have to. Hard 7 makes the next week really hard for me. Like I do much better work when I know if I don't get those people who can live on 3 hours a night sleep, I'm not one of them. I get stupid real fast. If you figure those out, but there are other life pieces that I would have built in more structurally that I still wish I had more discipline around. Law school's a good time to do it. You got 3 years to practice and hold yourself to it.
Thank you. We have a couple of other questions here. We are wondering what kind of connections you made at Willamette that helped you during your first couple of years searching for that career path.
I would say when I was at Willamette, there were quite a few other students from Alaska there in my class, as well as classes around me. And boy, we really stuck together when we got out, and were able to support each other and commiserate and do all the things. Just the experience of being a brand new lawyer, to be able to lean on other people was really, really helpful. And we've all, as we, practiced and started families and stuff, we don't see each other as much as we used to, but my husband and I were out taking a walk last week, and along comes one of the guys that was in his class walking down the street, and stopped and chatted. So, but I agree with David. You do have to spend time developing those connections while you're in school.
I think when I think about the connections I made the first 2 years of law school, they were definitely with my peers. And some of the best friends that I have today came from that experience. I don't know how those influenced my career path. I do think things like the mentoring program that the Oregon Women Lawyers does at the beginning of the year, I highly recommend that. You may get paired with someone who has an entirely different career path than you want to pursue, but they know people. I think those are really helpful programs the law school offers. And the ability to, part of what the mentors are charged with doing is connecting you with people who you might want to talk to see, depending on what you know or are curious about. So from a career standpoint, I would definitely take advantage of that and get to know the person in the Career Center who runs it. It's a small school. When they know you personally, they will think of you when those summer internships or those postgraduate opportunities become known to them, or the interviewers come to campus. To the extent anyone comes to campus ever again. Kidding.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, Nancy, I'd be interested on your perspective, but when we were in law school, it didn't feel like there was as much of an emphasis on networking outside. I mean, I just find students to be so, amazing about how they're putting themselves out there and trying to make those kinds of connections. And as Liz said, I think, they are so valuable. I'm thinking of, I participated or had Willamette students come and extern and intern for me in different roles that I've had. And some of them made just really great connections that way. There are just a lot of people out there in the Willamette community that I think want to, a Willamette alumni community that really want to be helpful and supportive of students. Like Nancy, I mean, I had a wonderful group of friends in law school. All my classmates, there might have been one or two that I didn't want to have, a drink with, but most of them I really enjoyed. But it's also difficult, one of them's a client right now. It's harder for me to think about how they really advanced my career at that time. But, all the connections you make you just never know where people are going to end up. And it is, I guess, the example of a general counsel who's now one of our clients, and we have stayed in somewhat of touch over the years, but, it's just nice because, that those connections can really last a lifetime.
Yeah, I mentioned I didn't spend a lot of time forming deep relationships with classmates, and that's a huge regret because the alumni network at Willamette is extremely strong, and despite the fact that I didn't invest a lot of time in it, there are a lot of connections that I made and a lot of people that I work with today, including my general counsel, by the way, was a classmate of mine at Willamette. So I hired him after he went to work at another firm and then came back to work for us. So those connections are real and they last. And I've had countless, when I was general counsel, encounters with classmates at other firms and so on, working together, and it makes a huge difference when you have that bond and that connection. So I would say, especially if you want to work in Salem, Portland, Seattle, Alaska, any of these places where there's strong alumni networks, it's a huge deal.
Other thoughts as I've been listening to others. There are some great clinic opportunities at Willamette. I probably can't recite all the current versions of those, but that's a way to often meet other members of the legal community. The Business Lawyering Institute has some interesting classes, but also brings in a lot of panelists and guest lecturers, and that's another way to network. And people who show up to do that on their free time do it because they care and they want you to succeed. And so they have great opportunities. I had a third thought, but I'm not remembering. Oh, adjunct professors. Adjunct professors have a life outside of that school as well, and they often can make introductions, they can be thought partners, they can give you ideas about your career, where you might look for jobs. And again, they don't make a lot of money doing that. They do that because they want to support you and see you succeed.
Thank you. Those are some great answers and some really good ideas for our incoming students. And for all of those who are tuning into this, here is an opportunity to connect with these alums. So opportunities are all around us. We have a question from Bailey. It's directed at Nancy or for whoever else may want to respond to this question. Can you expand on what the experience of starting your own practice was like? Had you always imagined that was something you wanted to do? And are there any challenges that really stick out about that experience?
Sure. I know it was nothing that I ever planned to do. Could not have imagined that. But I reached let me back up. When I had my children, I was working for a large Seattle-based law firm in their Anchorage office, and the partners agreed to me working part-time. Well, I learned very quickly that part-time was only the paycheck, but the hours were still the same. And so I thought, my husband had a really demanding job. We had little kids. It just something had to give. And I still remember to this day driving home from my last day there going, I can't believe you're leaving, And so it was somewhat accidental that I started that. I had agreed for the immediate future to watch the law firm of a sole practitioner, a friend of mine who had been elected to the legislature and needed someone to sort of babysit his practice while he was away for the legislative session. So that's how I kind of started. But what happened is all of the lawyers that I had been working for up until that point, it had been about 7-8 years into my practice, started calling me and saying, that case you were working on, we just got a motion for summary judgment, and is there any chance you'd want to write the reply? And I thought, sure, I can do that. And so basically it evolved into a contract law practice where I was doing a lot of really interesting work, but I was actually getting paid for every hour I was working, and I was doing it on my own schedule. So it turned out to be probably the most interesting, well, not the most interesting, but a very interesting part of my career. And as I said, I did it for 10 years. It paved the way for me to move into a general counsel role once I got out. So not planned at all. That's a perfect example of, what some of the other folks have said, is that you never know what's going to happen with you. And it worked out great.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on that topic? Okay,
Nancy summed it up.
Yeah, okay. Great. We'll move on to the next question. This is from Rhonda. Is there any advice for mature students that are making a career change in their 40s that are just starting their JD after a lengthy professional career?
You have a leg up. You have a big leg up. You have more baskets and context in which to catch the principles that are being thrown at you. And so I think you also have the you've had real life experience that, again, teaches you time management and discipline. And I think people will look to you for, they'll look to see how you're behaving and want to emulate some of that, in my experience. So I'm sure it's also unnerving to be making that kind of shift mid-career, but I think you'll find that it gives you a huge boost.
I would say from the student's perspective too, and Eva, you probably recall, we had some folks in our class that were in their 40s, even 50s, coming back to school, and I think they really enriched our experience, because rather than the bulk of us who were just fresh out of undergrad, here were some folks that already had lived in the real world, and I really enjoyed having them as classmates.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was pretty much the same age as the younger students, but I had like 3 years of work experience, and I think it made a big difference. I think, law school is, you have your college experience, and that, not that that's all parties and fun, but, law school is pretty demanding, and structure and discipline is really helpful. So, having had some of that in your life is, I think, extremely useful.
I would echo all that. I had 3 years of work experience too, not as many as someone in their 40s maybe, but I personally, for myself, I would not have made it, I don't think, had I come straight from undergrad into law school. One, I just needed a break from school for a few years there, but I just didn't have the maturity and the work ethic and all that to get through it. So I think it was actually very valuable to have that time. And I certainly had classmates. One of my friends was a kindergarten teacher for 25 years and then came to law school, and now she's a very successful land use planning attorney of all things. And so, you never know. And I think she's extremely grateful that she took the plunge and made that life change. And it worked out really well.
Wonderful. I have a question for all of the panelists. If you can think back to your days at Willamette and give us one example of a really positive memory that you have of Willamette, either the people or a class or whatever it may be.
Running in Minto Brown Park.
What was that? I missed the beginning.
Going running in Minto Brown Park.
Gosh, there are so many. It's really hard to choose from. I mean, I just remember some of our professors just made such a huge impression on me. Carlton Snow. Remember Carlton Snow, Nancy? I mean, just found John Paulus. These people that were just so inspiring. Really, really inspiring.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, those are some of my best memories. And moot court.
Yep.
Even though we didn't get to go to nationals.
Yep.
Because here was a great life lesson. I will never forget this. I'm scarred for life. Jim Baumgartner and I, moot court partners, we had the best brief. We were a killer team, but because we did not measure the margins correctly on our brief, we were up all night in my law office where I clerked, getting the brief all ready. And of course, I was the word processing person. Jim wasn't doing any of that. And so I don't know what happened, but somehow they were like a tiny bit off. And so we got deducted.
Oh, man.
A couple of points, and we would have won by a landslide had it not been for that. So early lessons and how cruel the law can be in terms of technical stuff that can totally ruin your, it was bad. But at least there were no clients paying for that. So that was good.
I remember someone telling me early on, I don't know if it was in law school, but with very few exception, most errors can be fixed. So I want to leave you with that. That's an awful story. It would still haunt me. I have so many good memories, and they're mostly about people. But to just give a different flavor to the answers, I really had a great experience in the negotiation class. I don't know how the dispute resolution program, if it's even a formal program anymore, is still run, but that was some of the most useful and interesting content, just in terms of interacting with, not just on behalf of your clients in your future life, but even when I got home, with my husband, just, like, what I think I hear you saying is, but I would think about some of those classes that round out your skills when you're headed out the door.
This might be cheating, but my favorite memory on campus is actually recently. I had the opportunity to go back and help with a class in the BLI and do some of the exercises, and I think it was actually a negotiation class. We did gamed out some negotiations, and that experience was so great for me, because it was so much closer to reality and the way the real world works, at least in my experience, than the sort of strict academic approach that traditional law school entails. And so seeing the way that the school has evolved and what the folks at the BLI are doing, it was awesome. And the students were just all engaging with it. And I wanted to grab all of them and just tell them how lucky they are that they actually have that experience, because we didn't get nearly as much of that as students get now. It's great.
Thank you. Any other questions from any students? There's nothing more in the chat right now. We'll give just a moment to pause and see if there are any other questions for our panelists. We have to learn to be comfortable in silence, right?
It's a great negotiating technique. I've never been very good at it, but I've seen it work.
Makes everyone a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. Do you guys just have any like parting advice, especially for incoming 1Ls? I tuned in a little bit late, but yeah, do you have anything that you would advise us to do or
not do?
Yeah, not do.
I'm a big believer in figuring out your own study style and not being distracted by others. Everyone will find their own rhythm and habits, but more is not always efficient. So figure out what you need to learn, and don't study what you already know at the same level that you're studying what you need to master, and you'll get a ton of volume. So the skill set you're building, and that will make your life more enjoyable in law school, is how to really be efficient in getting to the most important pieces of that. And you'll be surrounded by some people who study 18 to 20 hours a day, and they never leave the library. I guarantee you they are in the class. And if that works for them, that's great. That would not have worked for me. So have confidence in the thing that works for you, and push yourself to see how you can find the right structure and discipline that you need.
Try not to, I would say that's great advice. I would also say try not to let it can be really stressful, but take it seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously all the time. And build in some time to relax and have fun and enjoy your friends. I found it really effective to separate. I used to get really stressed out if I was in the library and people were like, oh my God, they were all just so much drama. And I would think to myself, well, if you'd spend less time complaining about how terrible this is and actually just get to work, you'd probably be fine. And so I would kind of separate myself sometimes just because I could focus better and not be too influenced by that sort of stressful negative energy from other people.
Yeah, I think that what Eva and Liz said is just fantastic advice. Just do your own thing and don't be intimidated by others. But the one thing I would offer too is to take advantage of time with professors. I think that's one of the really unique features of Willamette and its size. And I came from undergrad at the University of Washington, and if I saw a professor, it was through the 500 other people sitting in the lecture hall. And so I really had no idea until probably halfway or more through law school that I could walk up the stairs and talk to one of my professors. And people, my classmates, were saying, "Oh, I talked to so-and-so." And I'm like, "You did? How'd you do that?" You just walk upstairs and their doors are open. So I wish I would have taken more advantage of that. And not only does it help you in school, but those relationships can help you down the road as well.
I would echo all that again. And again, I made that mistake of not building on those relationships through school, and I regret that. And so, being a positive contributor to a healthy environment there is huge. And I think a lot of people fall into the competitive spirit, and it is competitive, right? But there's a way to do that is not adversarial and actually really helpful. And trust me, the relationships from law school last way beyond law school, like we've talked about. So it's way more important to be a good friend and a good contributor to that environment in the long run than it is to get, a little bit better grade or whatever it is that you think you get by competing hard. And I will tell you, I was the beneficiary of that. So this is a nightmare story. So right before our first set of finals, at the end of our first semester, my first year, I was parked at the Ram restaurant across the street from campus there, and my car got broken into, and my laptop with all of my notes and all my outlines and everything was stolen, and never to be seen again. And all my friends helped and gave me all their outlines and all that sort of stuff. It was very, very helpful. I would not have passed my first semester had I not had help from those friends, and I still remember it today. So it's important.
I'll also add that even if you're not at the top of your class like Eva was, you can still have a really successful career.
Don't believe everything you hear.
Thank you, guys.
So much.
All right. Well, thank you to all of our panelists, all of the students who tuned in. And once again, this is being recorded, and we will release the link after a couple of days when we get the whole video edited. So thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. And I hope that everyone had a really great time this last hour. Thanks so much.
Yeah. And if
Good luck, everybody.
anybody's from Alaska, give me a shout.
All right. I sent out the bios to everybody's email. So for all of our panelists, you have their biographical information and a way to reach them. So if you haven't already, you should be every day checking your Willamette email. And if you haven't seen those bios yet, please feel free to check them out. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.